Hello fellow mind travelers, and welcome to today's video where I will be talking about reincarnation. I'll be talking about how our ancestors viewed reincarnation, tell a few stories of people who claim to be reincarnated and have lived a past life before this, and of course tell you my personal thoughts and feelings about the topic. So, what is reincarnation? It's the belief that your soul, separate from the body, will come back after you die and reimplant itself into another being for the duration of that life. So kind of like a hermit crab, only way more magical and definitely cooler. So in Eastern philosophies, such as Buddhism and Hinduism, where reincarnation originates, it is believed that karma is ultimately what dictates how you will come back in your next life, and what that experience will be like. Each life is an extension of the last. So if you're living a life full of happiness and joy, that means that in your previous life you were good and you deserve this. If you're living miserable and you hate life and you're depressed, it means that in your previous life you were evil and you deserve the way that you currently feel. The main goal of reincarnation is to allow our souls to come back time and time again to live a life completely absent of sin. And after this lifetime, then we're able to live in eternity alongside God. So now let's go over how some of our ancestors viewed reincarnation and the afterlife. The Aztecs believed that reality was on the other side of death, and how you died would determine the fate of your soul in the afterlife. So if you died during battle, if you died on the altar, if you were sacrificed, or during childbirth, you joined the way of the sun on its eternal journey through the heavens. It was believed that if you died by drowning, you would go to the paradise of the waters, where your afterlife would consist entirely of happiness. For some souls, they would actually have to go to the land of the dead, where their soul would endure a long, dangerous journey, where if they succeeded, they would finally be able to live with eternal rest and happiness. The Mayans pretty much believed that life and death was a revolving door, and the soul after death would go into the underworld, be reborn into another human being, and have no memories of the previous life at all. The Incas believed in life after death, where righteous souls would live an afterlife alongside God in eternal happiness, and evil souls would go to a hellish underworld where it was nothing but death and despair for an entire afterlife. And finally, the Greeks believed that after death, something detached itself from the body and continued on independent life. Something like a double that could not be touched, but could move by itself and have desires. Plato even described in Phaedrus how the human soul, according to the level of discovery of the truth that it had reached, would come back into one type of body or another, and each life was a test where the soul was being perfected. Now, of course, as I research reincarnation, the main thing I want to do is be able to prove if it's real or not, right? So I looked into some stories of people that claim to have been reincarnated and lived past lives. Now, here are the two that I found that I felt had the most proof that I really want to share with you guys. Now, one of the most infamous cases, and the one that actually solidified reincarnation this century for Hindus, is Shanti Devi. So Shanti was born in 1926 in Delhi. And a very interesting thing to note was Shanti didn't speak a single word until she was 4 years old. And at that point, when she did speak, the first thing she told her mother was that Delhi was not her actual home, and that her actual home was a small town called Mathura that was around 70 miles away. At 8 years old, she told the headmaster at school that in her past life, her name was Lugdi and her husband's name was Kedar Nath. She then said that she had a son, but actually died 10 days after giving birth to him due to complication. After that, the headmaster was actually able to find a merchant in the town of Mathura who said that 9 years earlier, he had lost his wife 10 days after she gave birth to his son. So after being informed about this, Kedar went to Delhi to meet with Shanti, but didn't tell her who he was. But right upon locking eyes with her, she was able to recognize him as Kedar, her husband from her previous life, and after sharing some details with them about their life together, Kedar was convinced that Shanti was the reincarnated version of Lugdi, his previous wife. Now this is where the case gets so monumental, because when Mahatma Gandhi found out about it, he set up a council to investigate the claim. And in 1935, when Shanti was 9 years old, her and the council went to the small town of Mathura, where the test was seeing if she was able to recognize the other family members of Kedar, which of course she did with flying colors, proving that she was in fact the reincarnated soul of Lugdi. Then, in a surprising turn of events, she found out that Kedar had not kept some promises he had made to Lugdi on her deathbed and decided to bounce because she didn't have any time for liars. The second case we're going to go over is Patrick Christensen, who is believed to be the reincarnated soul of his brother Kevin, who died 12 years earlier at the age of 2 from cancer. So here are the facts to know about Kevin. So 6 months before Kevin passed, he started to walk. It was then where his parents noticed that he was developing a limp. And then shortly after that, he fell and broke his leg. At the hospital, after treating him for his broken leg, the doctors performed a biopsy where a small piece of Kevin's scalp was removed, just above his right ear. And after the test came back, he was then diagnosed with metastatic cancer. Soon after the diagnosis, Kevin's parents started to notice that tumors were developing on his body. And shortly after that, a tumor developed behind one of his eyes that caused blindness in that eye. In efforts to combat the cancer, Kevin was given chemotherapy, which left extensive scarring on the right side of his neck. And unfortunately, just 3 weeks after his second birthday, Kevin passed away. So now, let's talk about his brother Patrick. When he was born, he had a slanting birthmark on the right side of his neck, exactly where Kevin's scars were from the chemotherapy. He had a nodule on the right side of his scalp above the ear, right where Kevin had the biopsy. He had cloudiness in his left eye that eventually led to blindness and was diagnosed as corneal leukemia. And wouldn't you know that when he started to walk, he had a limp. Are you seeing the similarities here? Then, at the age of 4, Patrick asked his mom to take him back to the house that he grew up in that was brown and orange. The only thing is, of course, he never grew up in a house that was brown and orange. Those were the colors of the house that Kevin, his brother, grew up in. And that was an extremely interesting piece of evidence to me, because both Patrick and Shanti, at the age of 4, had a revelation that they had either reincarnated or had fuzzy memories that made no sense. So upon doing more research, I found that in the 1960s, there was a doctor named Ian Stevenson that conducted research on over 2,500 cases of children who had claimed to be reincarnated. And of course, one of the similarities in a lot of these kids was they didn't speak until the age of 4. What he also found was that upon hypnotizing these children, 20% of them were actually able to go back beyond this life and remember how they died in a previous life. And a fun side note, and something that kind of gave me the chills, is the line that Ian Stevenson would use while hypnotizing was, "Go back as far as you can. Do you still see yourself?" Now, I've always been a huge fan for the idea of reincarnation, and after researching for this video, I found myself believing in it more than ever. It makes total sense that this life is just a series of tests that our soul goes on to until it reaches a perfect existence. What do you guys think? Do you believe in reincarnation? Do you actually believe that you have lived past lives and you have memories? I would love to hear about those in the comments. And as for always, guys, keep doing your own research and safe travels.